Today is Tuesday, December 23rd, 2025. This is Quick Start from CBN News. I'm Dan Andros. Australia's Prime Minister apologizes after getting booed at a vigil. We'll have that top story and more on today's podcast, where we bring you news from a Christian perspective. Don't forget to subscribe, leave a rating on your favorite podcast platform of choice. It really helps us. We'd appreciate it. You can always email us as well, quickstartpodcast@cbn.org. Glad you're here with us as we're getting through the news of the day. With me today, CBN's Billy Hallowell. On the focus story, Billy, artificial intelligence continues to spark debate. A Christian group is helping people better explore the issue.
Yeah, and that group is Glue. We're going to get into what they're doing and why they have confidence despite challenges surrounding AI.
Yeah, looking forward to the details there coming up in just a moment. Also on the main thing, we're going to talk about Nigeria, a major U.S. move aimed at saving lives and protecting persecuted Christians. We'll talk about it coming up on the main thing. And speaking of persecuted Christians, as we've been saying, our sponsor for our podcast, Christian Solidarity International. We'll be talking about more about them coming up here on the main thing. But make sure you're checking out if you're feeling led to help persecuted Christians physically, in addition to the prayers that we're giving them, csi-usa.org. Go to csi-usa.org. Any amount really that you can contribute would really help. And they're boots on the ground. They are there supporting pastors, doing all the things, praying with them, doing the things you need to do to help these people, whatever they can do to help these people who are on the front lines of Christian persecution around the globe. Some of the most intense persecution we see around the globe. So csi-usa.org. Make sure you go over there and check that out. And with that, we're going to go to the news in 90 seconds. And Australia's Prime Minister is facing some pretty big pushback and anger, actually, and grief after a terror attack that left 15 people dead. And now he's saying sorry. This is Australian Prime Minister Anthony Albanese issued a public apology to the Jewish community following that horrible terror attack at the beach, acknowledging what he called the weight of responsibility for the massacre. He was loudly booed at a memorial vigil after the attack, which targeted the Jewish Hanukkah celebration and was carried out by Islamic State-inspired terrorists who reportedly railed against quote-unquote Zionists. He said he understood the anger directed at him, admitting emotions were raw and that many people believe his government failed to stem a sharp rise in antisemitism since the Gaza war began. The Prime Minister announced a formal review of Australia's law enforcement and intelligence agencies to assess whether they had proper tools and coordination to prevent the attack. Jewish leaders, however, are pushing for a royal commission, the country's strongest form of inquiry, arguing the fails demand a deeper, more transparent investigation. And Albanese defended the narrower review, saying it would move faster and lead to immediate action. Those are just some of today's top headlines. You can check out more over at cbnnews.com. And Billy, that's only even addressing half the problem. Another big part of the problem is the immigration that has just flooded into Australia and places like Europe that we're seeing all across the globe. And on the other hand, I saw the meme going around, the tennis star, and I'm forgetting his name, Djokovic, I think, or I'm sorry, I'm forgetting his name, but you know who I'm talking about, one of the top tennis players in the world. He got banned from going into Australia because he wouldn't get the COVID vaccine. And so there's the meme of him showing him being banned and then showing these Islamic State radicals being accepted into Australia. And I think you can talk about anti-Semitism all you want, but you also have to talk about the fact that thousands and thousands and thousands of immigrants, sometimes illegal immigrants, are flooding into the country and not assimilating. That's a problem.
It's a major problem, and we've had a long history with this. And I think, assimilation in general is something that needs to be discussed. But when you have these sorts of issues, and just extremism in general, and you have debates around how to handle this, and clearly it feels like the anti-Semitism, the chaos, these issues, they're all colliding at the same time. And, 9/11, not an anti-Semitic event, but a radical Islamic event, right? This is not a new issue. 1993, World Trade Center bombing. This goes back, but it feels like what's really troubling about it is it sort of coincides with the rise in mass shootings to begin with, right? So we're watching all these things sort of happen at the same time. And I think everybody's sort of left to wonder, what are these governments doing? Are our governments doing enough to protect people? Are they not? It feels like they're not.
Yeah, and that's exactly what the people of Australia were feeling. And I mean, how else do you get booed at a vigil if you're not feeling, and the people are not really feeling it and saying, you let us down, and this is a massive failure. And more countries are going to see this sort of thing if they don't address the issue. And so we'll keep an eye on what happens with politicians around the globe as they deal with not only anti-Semitism, but a lot of rise in migration coming from the Middle East. And it's just sort of perpetuating these issues. So we'll keep an eye on it at cbnnews.com. All right, we're going to go to the focus story now. And artificial intelligence continues to spark debate. A Christian group is helping people better explore the issues. Tell me about this.
Yeah, this is interesting. Nick Skytland, the vice president and AI developer and research and product over at Glue. Glue is a Christian organization. He recently explained the impact of AI. He joined us on CBN News, and he explained how his organization's on a mission to investigate how AI really contends with and deals with Christian worldview, right? When you go to AI and you ask it questions, how much of that is coming through a Christian faith worldview? And so they've embarked on really what they call this benchmark. It's the Flourishing AI benchmark, and they're using it to sort of assess what is happening on different AI projects, different AI platforms, to see, again, how faithful those platforms are in terms of their responses, right? Where are those philosophies coming from? Skytland really argued that mainstream AI models default to a generic or secular advice giving rather than biblical or Christian guidance. So that obviously becomes a barrier and a problem if you're a Christian looking for Christian advice and information, right? So here's what he said. He said, Glue is a technology company that serves the faith ecosystem. And back in July, we had released some research that we call Flourishing AI. And it's just a benchmark that really grounded in 7 dimensions of human flourishing based on a lot of research that's out there. So all this has to do with human flourishing. And what they're hoping to do is create what they believe is the first comprehensive framework that measures AI alignment for human flourishing from a biblical worldview. And he said an authentic biblical worldview. And so pretty interesting that there's sort of like a rubric, right, for these AI organizations and companies.
Yeah, and so obviously there's been a lot of talk in general about AI and how do Christians interact with this. So what's unique about this effort?
Yeah, I mean, I think what's unique is the fact, again, that this would be the first effort to really measure. And once you've created a measurement, across the board, you can reuse that measurement again and again and again and assess how good and how well the AI platforms are actually doing in this area. So it becomes something that is a long-term helpful tool. And so for that, I think this is really interesting. He said, look, the AI does have a built-in bias. It does have a built-in, essentially hidden worldview, especially to the average user. And so they want to get a handle on that and help Christians in particular understand where that worldview is coming from.
And so why is Nick positive, despite obviously the clear and obvious, like the hidden worldview and these sorts of things we see all the time with AI, why is he positive in spite of those challenges?
He said the models are actually getting better. He said even as challenges persist, that parents and educators can find huge opportunity for Christians here as we sort of look at this Flourishing AI benchmark, right? This becomes a tool that can be helpful so that we can navigate these things. I have used AI, personally, for many questions about pulling out Bible verses or themes, and it is very helpful sometimes, but we have to be aware that there are worldview issues. This is not a human being. This is computers. It's machines, right? But he is positive that it can get better and that the models are improving.
Okay, yeah, interesting stuff. Any final thoughts on this?
Yeah, I mean, look, I think we got to be on top of this. AI is becoming creepy now, right? It's beneficial, it's useful, but it's also taking over our lives. And so we want to make sure we fully understand what exactly is happening.
Yeah, 100%. And I will say, when you talk about being creepy, I think I might have mentioned it on this podcast at one point, but I'm really not a fan of how it tries to affirm me in whatever I'm talking about. I think I was doing painting the other day, and I was asking it. I'm not really great with colors, so I was asking it like, "What does this go with this?" And it was like, "Oh, your room looks epic. This is so nice. Like, what a great choice." And listen, I don't need a cheerleader from AI. Just give me the answer. Does it match or not? So yeah, it is really creepy, and it's certainly they're trying to integrate it and make it feel like a person or whatever. So there's going to be a lot of questions and a lot of things we have to continue to grapple with as this becomes more integrated in our lives. So appreciate you bringing that one to the podcast today. And we're going to go to the main thing now. And a major U.S. move aimed at saving lives and protecting persecuted Christians is in one of the world's most dangerous places to follow Jesus. The United States has signed a $5.1 billion 5-year health agreement with Nigeria, directing new funding to strengthen healthcare with a significant boost for Christian-run hospitals and clinics. About $200 million of the U.S. funding will support more than 900 Christian health facilities, which serve over 30% of Nigeria's population, despite making up just 10% of the overall number of providers. So this agreement is tied to Nigerian government commitments to better protect Christian communities facing targeted violence, particularly in the Middle Belt and northern regions. And Billy, this is something that, we both talked to Hassan John from Christian Solidarity International, who is from Nigeria, and he explained on the CBN News YouTube channel, you can see that video there, explained a lot of what's going on here. But it's good to see this move because what Hassan was saying is that the government there in Nigeria is just really not doing much, right? And so in addition to the U.S. pledge, Nigeria is also pledging an additional $3 billion of its own funding. So hopefully this shows maybe they're taking a step in the right direction, but I don't think a lot of people trust the government as far as they could throw them at this point.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's the issue here, right? And one of the reasons why attention in media is so important on this is because it puts pressure on them. They're responding now because Trump is putting pressure on them. The world is seeing it. The media is covering it. There's not a blackout anymore. It's out there. We're aware of it. And because of that, this is why it's important we talk about this stuff. It puts that added, pressure on them to do the right thing. But yeah, obviously they spent a long time, it seems, not doing the right thing. So you have to keep that pressure on them, or else it just goes back into the background and nobody cares.
Yeah. I mean, and this is, people who track persecution like Christian Solidarity International, they'll tell you Nigeria is pretty much one of the places where the most Christians are killed more than anywhere else in the world. And so, when you said that, people see this issue now, and it definitely had a kind of a blast onto the media scene for a hot minute. But really, it's, a lot of the media hasn't covered this a ton. So why do you think this crisis gets so little mainstream coverage? It did get a flash in the pan a week or two ago, but overall, not a lot. Why do you think that is?
Well, I think that, we want to talk about positive things and uplifting things, and we don't want to be bothered with the real news that is going on in the world, and also it's not in America, right? So it becomes harder to talk about. I also think even the way the media has covered it has been abysmal, and acting as though many of the national outlets acting as though this isn't really a problem targeting Christians. It's a problem targeting everyone. And it is true in Nigeria that we have a situation where Muslims are also targeted. If you're a moderate Muslim, you'll also be targeted. But we know for a fact that Christians are being strategically targeted by numerous terror groups and numerous radical groups there in Nigeria. The fact that we're denying that is insane. So even the way the media has covered it when they has been at moments unhelpful. And so I can only assume ignorance, not understanding, persecution. And in America, for those American media outlets, because Christianity is so prevalent here, it might be difficult for some of these journalists to understand what it's like other places.
Yeah, absolutely. And listen, you've also interviewed and talked to the people at Christian Solidarity International before, and they're there on the ground. They do great work. And so for believers listening who are praying, and they have been praying for persecuted Christians in places like Nigeria, if they're feeling led to give, just tell me for a minute or two about CSI and kind of the work you've seen that they're doing.
Yeah, I mean, what they do is they try to go in and they try to advocate and they try to have people on the ground to help There was a priest in Nigeria who had been taken captive a while back. He was on the ground trying to help the persecuted church. They'll provide resources. There was one country, and I'm forgetting where it was, where they'll figure out what is the thing that is the barrier, right? Or that is causing the persecution. They'll try to step in and help provide physical means to solve issues in various countries. This is an organization that works all over the world through policy, through actions, again, on the ground. So it's not just policy. It's not just calling your local leaders. It's actually being there. They have many, many people. And in fact, the man you mentioned who we interviewed, Hassan, he is one of the people who has been on the ground. And so, they're just, I love organizations like that because it's not just one thing they're doing. They're kind of doing everything they can to curb the persecution.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, we'll continue to pray for all the persecuted Christians around the globe, including the ones in Nigeria. And again, if you want to go to help, any amount helps. CSI-USA.org, CSI-USA.org. Make sure you're joining and being the hands and feet of Christ there. They're doing great work and helping our brothers and sisters in a lot of needs. So I appreciate you helping me break that one down today, Billy. And that's going to leave us with time on the podcast today for one last thing.
All right, we've got Matthew 16:25. For whoever wants to save their life will lose it, but whoever loses their life for me will find it. This is about clinging to Christ, putting ourselves to the side.
Yeah, and it's countercultural, counterintuitive to what you would think, right? But that's what Christ calls us to do, and it really challenges your day-to-day and how your focus is day-to-day when you think about a verse like Matthew 16:25. Appreciate that. That's going to do it for this edition of the Quick Start Podcast. Make sure you're getting on over to cbnnews.com, faithwire.com for more news from a Christian perspective. God bless. See you back here tomorrow.